Here we go.
Okay, so I've got my so I think the sounds all okay. Okay, perfect. So yes, thank you, Frank, for agreeing to talk to me about your prestigious career. It is very kind of you. I just wanted to ask just a straightforward beginning question, really, of why you became an actor in the first place and how you kind of went about sort of challenging that desire.
Why I became an actor? Well, I knew when I was about four, I think, because my glamorous aunt, Beryl, who gave birth to a GI baby and had wonderful fingernails painted red, which is pretty unusual then. Now, that would be about 1940, I suppose. She took me to a show, a variety show, and there was somebody on stage singing Chattanooga Choo Choo. And I had this wonderful feeling. I thought, I've got to be there. He was a 4-year-old boy. And I was totally enraptured, really. And I didn't tell anybody for ages, really. I just knew that that was my destiny. And when I got to be 18, I was still at school. And I went and knocked on the stage door at York. I come from York. And if you knock on the stage door, you're getting nowhere because in provincial theatres, they don't normally have a doorman. And anyway, it was opened by the guy who was the artistic director of the York Theatre Royal, a very highly regarded theatre. And he was looking distracted, and he looked at me, and he said, what do you want? And I said, I want to be an actor. And then he sort of focused on me, and he said, can you learn lines quickly? Yes, I said. You always say yes. So he said, well, come in. And so I went in, and we went to his office, and he gave me the script, and he said, read that. So I did, speech, and then he said, you can start now. And I took this very naturally. I thought, oh, they've seen my genius. But the fact is, they just sacked some actor who hadn't learned his lines, and it was weekly rep, and we got to Wednesday, and he was in a panic. And when he opened the stage door, it was because he was thinking, who's this? What else is happening to me? The whole world's gone crazy. And I saved him a whole day's rehearsal because he was on his way to ring an agent to get another actor. So I was there. And that's how I got into the theatre, really. And they kept me on because I overacted like mad, which the public always love. And he kept me for the rest of the school holidays, 6 plays, I think. And that's when I knew I was in the right place. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you then go on to have any sort of formal training, or was it all kind of by experience?
No, I never did training at all. I now teach actors, but of course you can't really teach acting. I mean, you can teach little tricks and little, well, not tricks. People hate the word tricks. They call it technique. But of course, you do have to learn basic things like that. I mean, when I was my first job at York, the one I've talked about, I was given very few notes, but they were all very simple and practical. And one of them I remember was, as soon as you can and make it look natural, look up for some reason, because unless they've really seen your face clearly, they don't really hear what you say. Isn't that a marvelous note?
Yes, yes.
So, of course, I've been doing that ever since. But you've got to do it subtly. Anyway, that was it. So I know I haven't had any formal training. But I then, you see, then I went to university for 3 years. And when I came out again, I did 2 years of weekly rep. That's 100 plays. And then I went to a fortnightly rep for a year. And then to Bristol Old Vic. That was really my ambition. 4-week theatre. The plays were done for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So the training I had, and people of my generation, I'm 87, people of my generation often didn't get any training. you know, Ian McKellen didn't, Derek Jacobi didn't, a few others. But now I think you do have to have training, because it's a way of kicking yourself into being seen and getting an agent. Yeah, I was lucky, really, in many ways, very lucky. I wonder what I would have been like with somebody teaching me how to act. I was a bit arrogant when I was young, you know. I used to think, well, I don't want to hear what's wrong with me. I want to hear what's right.
Well, yes, definitely. Oh, yes.
But I always do, when I'm teaching, I've taught in America and all that, acting, I always encourage, you know, look for the good points. That gives you a platform of confidence when you're likely to improve.
Yeah. Because of course you need that confidence and that sort of, which can sort of very easily bleed into self-importance, can't it? So it's kind of a fine line between being confident and knowing your ability, and then let it go into your head when you get a bit of success.
You've absolutely hit it. You've got to be humble about the work. That's vital. And you've got to work very, very hard on it, and realize that you might be wrong, and etc., etc. But you've also got to have enough confidence to actually say, look at me, which is basically what acting is. I think it's in Russia that the symbol of being an actor is this. I don't know if you can see how low down. This is actor.
I can kind of see sort of just about here sort of level.
All right. Well, this is the sign to say you're an actor.
Yeah.
It's a bit unkind, isn't it? Anyway, there you go. So,
so the sign is you say it was that, Frank, or
it's pointing at yourself.
Oh, just point. Yes, yeah. So you're the
I think it's the Russians sign for it. But I've acted with very great actors, and generally they're very modest, as a matter of fact, and not pompous. You know?
Yeah. I find that sometimes the actors suffer from sort of thinking that they perhaps shouldn't be there, or maybe the imposter syndrome, and so some of them tend to be insecure. Sometimes I find.
Yes, I think that does apply to a lot of people. It's never, thank God, applied to me. I've always felt that I was at home on the stage, really. Yeah, right from the beginning, when I first did a professional job, everyone was very welcoming to me because I was suddenly needed, you know, and that gave me a sort of basic confidence. Yes.
And am I correct in saying that your professional debut was 1959 in Henry IV Part 2, the York Theatre?
No, that's not true. It's not true at all. No. These things, that was, I think I must have said it to somebody, but it isn't true. My first professional part, in the sense that I was paid to act, was in a pantomime at Harrogate when I was 16, and I played. I found the program. I'd kept the program. 16. That's ages ago, and I was billed as Frank Smith, which is my real name, and it said Frank Smith, Guardsman. But I also played in the pantomime the back legs of a camel. And I wish I'd put that in my biography. I can't. This one about Mouldy playing Henry IV. It was quite amusing to play somebody called Mouldy, but back end of a camel's better.
Yeah. And so you had quite a success with Shakespeare, and in terms of theatre.
Yes.
Do you always find that very natural, Shakespeare?
Yes, I do. Shakespeare is something that just natural for me. I just love it, and I've played all the great parts actually: Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear, Coriolanus. I played King Lear when I was 42 on Irish television. Can you imagine? The makeup took about 5 hours to do. Wow. But all these parts, they're wonderful parts actually. And if you trust the part, Don't try and mess it about, you know. It will carry you. Shakespeare's a wonderful helper to an actor.
Yeah.
He fills in everything you need to know.
Mm.
You know, I consider it to be easily the best part of my career.
Mm. As an actor, are you conscious of sort of wanting to cross off Hamlet and certain milestones where you deem you've reached a certain point? Is it kind of an ambition to get those big roles under your belt?
Yes, it is. It really is. Especially Hamlet. That's the biggest one.
Mm.
And I desperately wanted to do that. I'd already played Hamlet in the National Theatre when I was joining the National Theatre. I took over from Peter McHenry, I think it was. So I used to show off and say it to everybody. Yes, I'm playing Hamlet at the Old Vic. But of course, in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, Hamlet's a pretty small part. But I was determined to get the big part, and I did. And some of the other big parts I've absolutely adored. Richard III is a great part, and I've played that in America as well. And the other one I really love, and I kind of identify with this bit on this, but it's Macbeth. You know, he's a villain, but oh God, those lines are so wonderful, you know, wonderful lines. And to be able to stand there and just say these deep emotions, you don't have to work too hard, as a matter of fact. You know, the lines do a lot for you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's great from Shakespeare is that even the villains, that they're all three-dimensional. So you can feel that there's sympathy, and you can sort of, because of course nobody thinks themselves as a villain, do they? So it's kind of sort of mold this character in a way that is relatable, I guess, to the audience.
You're absolutely right. You've got to relate to the audience, and if you can find some humor in these tragic parts, that's a big plus, because audiences love to laugh, you know. And I think Shakespeare doesn't judge his characters, and neither should the actor. He shouldn't come on and say, I'm going to show them what a villain I am. I mean, unless it's Richard III, when he actually says that. That's what's so wonderful about that part. It's the most theatrical part of any part, really. Everything he does, he brings the audience in and tells them what he's doing. And they love it. To play it is a great thrill, because the audience really respond to you. As long as you play it wittily, you must have some wit. Laurence Olivier, who I worked with, when I was a schoolboy, I saw him play Richard III. And I thought it was absolutely marvelous. Very witty, very mercurial, you know. And I have to say that when I played it, I couldn't get his intonations out of my mind. I just couldn't. I tried, because, you know, who wants to be a second-rate Laurence Olivier? But it was a great performance, and I did pinch a bit from it.
Well, I suppose we all pinch something, don't we, from somewhere, whatever our profession is. So
Yeah.
But you're creating something original by putting it all together in a certain way, aren't you?
Yes, you do. And in fact, I said Sir Laurence became a friend, and his lovely wife Joan is still a friend. Joan's still alive at nearly 94. And I said to him once, I said, I've got a confession to make. I couldn't get your Richard III out of my mind, and I pinched the way you said a few lines. And he said, my dear boy, I pinch all the time. That's what you do. It's sweet of him. There you go.
You mentioned that you changed your name. Was there a particular reason for that?
Yes. I was called Frank Smith, and when I first got an agent, she'd come to see Salisbury rep, and I was playing Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing, and she wanted me to join her, and I signed for 7 years, which is unheard of now. But and then she said to me, we ought to change your name. You sound like a northern character actor, which is exactly what I was. So So choose something with an initial near the top of the alphabet, because then you will be the top of the posters. So the reason for this was, she said, you will never get anywhere with a name like Smith. So when I met Maggie Smith, I warned her about this. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Now you can be called anything, you know, really unpronounceable names are quite fashionable now. I regret it, actually, because I had lots of friends at school and university, lots of friends, and have lost touch, partly because of the change of name.
Ah, yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any other highlights of your time at the York Theatre Royal that you want to mention before we move on a bit?
Highlights, no, but a practical thing was that you've got to fight your corner a bit. And after I'd done 3 plays, 3 weeks, 3 plays, and they'd given me £10 a week, which is quite a lot actually when I was that age. How long ago is that? 70 odd. And he called me into his office, the director of productions, and he said, Frank, we're very, very pleased with your work. We're keeping you on another 3 weeks, but we can't really afford £10 a week. Would you accept 8? And I heard myself say, no, we agreed 10. Wasn't that cheeky? And it had just the right reaction, because he laughed. He just laughed and said, okay. Yeah. It's a bit bold, wasn't it?
Well, I suppose you've got to get what you want, and
yes.
So then, of course, you moved to the Bristol Old Vic, and I believe,
that was
again, if this is correct, that you were the youngest leading man that they ever had. Was that true?
Yes, I was, and I played all these fantastic parts like Oedipus Rex. You name it, I played it. And Mercutio was a very important part for me, because we took the company to America, and we did tour all around America and Broadway and everything. And I had I must say, a bit of a success. And we also played in Los Angeles, and Universal Studios came to see me and offered me a 7-year, what they called a grooming contract. That means that you're allied to the studio. You can't work for anybody else unless they allow you. And they pay you quite well. But I didn't really want to do it, because I wanted to play all these great parts, you know. I didn't want to play some small part in a movie as Darth Vader or whatever. I just didn't want it. So I didn't do it. That's that.
Yes, you do find it, a lot of people, particularly those days, that had this kind of contracts, they were kind of a bit trapped, and they would never kind of got what they were promised. And I think you're quite right to turn that down.
Yes, I think I was. How do you know? I think we should never have any regrets about what you've done. What's the point of it? There's no point in regrets. No. You can imagine some wonderful scenario when everything was marvelous, but you just don't know. I could die in this interview. I hope not.
Yes, wouldn't be reputationally good, but
anything's possible.
Yeah.
We're talking great parts and all that, so saying that that's the justification. And it was, I was asked to play, this is an introduction to my one-man show, which I've done in 65 countries, which is a record. It's about the 19th century actor, William Charles Macready. And I was playing Hamlet, and someone gave me his diaries, and rather a slimmer version than the actual diaries. I mean, they were cut a bit. And when I was playing Hamlet, and it was a first night present, actually. And then one night I came in to play Hamlet, and 25 minutes before I was due on stage, they told me that my father had died. That was the news. And the play is all about your father dying. My father, methinks I see my father, you know. And he was a man taken for all in all. I shall not look upon his life again. So you can imagine what that was doing to me.
Mm.
But I got through the show, and then I went back to the digs, and there was Macready's diary that I actually hadn't read. It was given to me on the first night. So I opened it, and I opened it at a point which said his daughter had died, and the next night he had to go on and perform. And I identified totally with what he wrote. Wonderful, extraordinary perception he had. You know, that having to pretend to be buoyant, for instance, you know, when you're feeling like death, is in a funny way a kind of catharsis, really. Anyway, I identified with him. So I got carried away. And then about a year later, I was asked to play Macbeth for the first time at the Northcote Theatre, Exeter. And I said to the director, Macbeth? Oh, that was Macready's greatest part, and the part he used when he said his big farewell at Drury Lane. Hmm. I'll come and play Macbeth if you'll let me do an evening reading or speaking about Macready. I was terribly caught up in this man. I identified with him. And so there was a kind of pause, and he said, yes, okay, that'll be fine. We can fit that in. So then I had to get to writing it, you know, and then I did Macbeth. I think it was 3 weeks, something like that, and then I was on, and I realized that it wouldn't catch an audience unless I was Macready. So I put it all in the first person, and I'd never had stage fright before. But on the first performance, I suddenly started shaking. I thought, what's going on? And I went down to the prompt corner, and I said to the nice stage manager girl, how long have I got? And she said, 5 minutes. I said, right. Oh, and she said, and there's a Macready descendant in the audience, his great-great-great-grandson. And then that had a very curious effect on me. I thought, right, I can't be nervous. And so I was, and I went up. And I was terribly lucky because there was an American in the audience who was a producer. And he came around and he said, you've got to do this show in New York. And I thought it was a kind of joke. But anyway, it wasn't. And I did do it in New York. And that was a kind of huge change for me in my life. It was very, very different. Because I did that show for 25 years, I think, on and off. And so, in a sense, I was never out of work, which is the great demon, you know, that most actors suffer. Every actor's out of work sometime, and if you're passionate about it, it's sometimes almost physically painful that you can't do your job. So I always felt that. There were, of course, some periods when I didn't get a booking or something. But I knew I always had this wonderful, wonderful part to play.
And of course, nowadays filming theatre productions is very commonplace. But when I suppose you did your film version of Macready, that was probably quite rare. How did that kind of come about?
That was because I did a run at the Arts Theatre in London. Loads of London theatres as well. National Theatre, I did it there. And it was seen by a company called Bright Thoughts. And he took the Fortune Theatre, which I later played in Woman in Black, actually. Very happy year. And so it's filmed for television with an invited audience. And I'd never looked at it. But about 30 years later, I was in America doing my teaching the students theatre, and they all wanted me to do Macready. So I said, well, I don't have the costumes with me, you know, I don't know. But I tell you what, I can send for the TV version, and we can look at that. So it came over quickly by air, and I watched it with the students. And normally I hate looking at myself, but I looked exactly like my grandson. So, so I thought, oh, how marvelous. And I really enjoyed what he was doing, because I looked entirely different, you know, just like him. It's a strange thing. But I stopped doing it because I used to do a cartwheel in it, which always used to get a laugh and applause and everything. And then towards the end of my doing the show, the last performance, I mean, instead of getting a round of applause, I got a gasp of horror. I thought, this is not having the effect that I want. So I don't do it now. Yeah. I could recite it now, the whole thing. Of course I could. I've done it in all those countries. And drawn them. And the big thing you learn when you go around the world with one performance is that the public are pretty much the same wherever you go. People are the same. Basically, they're the same. Yeah. It's been a wonderful experience for me, that.
Oh yes, yes. Do you have a like a small extract that is your favourite from Macready, or something that you find particularly?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And it's towards the end. Ladies and gentlemen, my last appearance is played, and I stand before you. I'm sorry, I'm too moved to say it. Never mind. But he did do this very dignified farewell performance.
Yeah.
And he'd never allowed his children, he had 10 children, he'd never allowed his children to watch him act, because he thought they would feel demeaned, because actors were not respected, you know, in those days. He was, because of his personal dignity. But anyway, he let the children watch him in this final performance. And the Drury Lane, it was, they went mad, the crazy, applause, applause, Macready, Macready, God bless you, and all that. And he took the hand of his little girl, and she whispered to him, Papa, I'm glad you're no longer going to be an actor. So it wasn't quite the effect he'd hoped.
Yeah.
But if you're performing for your family, you can't sort of get that out of your mind, really, because they know you so well. And I remember, this is quite interesting. I used to wear contact lenses all the time. I've had my eyes done now. But I discovered that I daren't wear them when I'm doing Macready, because if you get some grit in your eye, you can't suddenly stop acting and say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take out a contact lens. So I used to play without the lenses in. And then I had my eyes done after many years. And so I could see clearly all the time. And I could see the audience, you see. The audience had become a nice cozy blur. Didn't have to concentrate too much. And I remember doing one of my effects, which I thought was so wonderful. And somebody was yawning on the front row. So it's a bit dicey seeing your audience. But you can never sort of command an audience to do something. There's always somebody who wants to be a bit anarchic, you know, and you've got to take them on board here.
How much do you kind of, when you're in perhaps a play where you've got moments where you're reacting or waiting for somebody to do a speech, do you look around the audience a little bit and kind of judge the mood, or just sort of out of curiosity? Or?
I have been known to. I don't recommend it, but certainly in Woman in Black, which I did for a year at the Fortune, there are times when it is perfectly permissible for you to stare at the audience pretending you're seeing a ghost. And I used to sort of suss out how many young people were there and how many old people and all that. Yeah, yeah. That was a lovely play to do. It's a very funny, very, no, it's not funny, very scary, I think is the word. People used to scream, really scream at various points. Extraordinary. Anyway, that's me. Yeah.
Were your parents so supportive in your career?
Yes, they were.
They were.
My father was thrilled. I think my father wanted to be an actor, and he was actually a professional photographer and a terribly good one, really marvelous. He was on the Daily Mirror and then on the York Evening Press, and he's taken some fantastic pictures. But I had no opposition at all. My father was absolutely thrilled. And he came to see me in a play at York when I was very young. And he said something which is a bit revealing. He said, "You made everybody else look like waxworks." In other words, I was overacting. But he liked it.
Yes.
Yeah. I loved him a lot. And as I said earlier, he died during my playing Hamlet. And he'd been too ill to come and see it. That was very sad for me. My mother didn't work. Women of that period rarely did work, although she worked like mad in her life, you know. We weren't rich or anything. She used to make us clothes just to keep going. And I remember the butcher was never paid. Anyway, but she was a wonderful woman, really wonderful. And she came to see me because she lived in York too, when I was playing Thomas More in Man for All Seasons. A marvelous play, a wonderful part. And I was playing it in York Minster. And I remember the verger showed me where I was to dress, and it was the chapter house. And while he was talking to me, I sat down on one of the marble chairs there just to listen to him. And he said, "Oh, you're sitting where Richard III used to sit in the Council of the North." Isn't that amazing? Anyway, she came to see me do Thomas More, and I'd given her some gloves for a Christmas present. And it was cold outside, so she kept them on for the play. And when she was very moved by the play, when she saw me, she sort of half thought I was the character. And she said, I couldn't believe that man had given me these gloves. Isn't that sweet? She was very, very half, she was an intelligent woman, though not brilliant or anything, but a kind, nice woman. But she'd more or less accepted that performance as real.
Well, it's the best compliment you could get, isn't it, really, as an actor?
Yes, I think it is. I think it is. And I see nowadays, television acting particularly, I watch it and I think some of it is so sublime, you know, beautiful. The total identification they have with the character. Well, I've done a lot of television really in my time, but I think the acting in television has improved. Like musical theatre training has improved. I definitely would say that. But some of the actors, they live these parts in the telly, and they're not doing what we were always taught to do. You know, in television, they would say, slightly angle your head, so you will favour the camera, you know, and all that. They don't do it anymore, and it's miles better, you know. Sometimes they have a long scene and you can hardly see their face, but you're waiting to see their face, you see, that's the difference. Anyway, there you go. That's my tribute to present day actors.
So did you always want to do some television going in between the two, or was it just kind of sort of it came along?
Now, I wasn't all that mad keen on doing television, but I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. And sometimes I did. I was in, the only thing that people might know me about these days is being in Eastenders, playing Dot's gentleman friend.
Yeah.
I remember when they asked me to play the part, June Brown, lovely woman, was playing Dot, and Dot was a star in the show, and I'd never seen it, so I thought, well, I better watch it, you know. I wasn't working, and Mary said, "There's a lot of money." I said, "Yes, okay." So I watched the show, and I said to Mary, "But they're awful people." And she said, "But they're just playing the parts, you know." I said, "Oh, yes, of course." So when I met the people, they were, of course, very nice, just like actors, you know. Very friendly, very warm, very welcoming. So I enjoyed that very much, yes. Yeah.
Do you have a particular favourite memory from EastEnders, or something that you enjoy particularly about your character?
It would be associated with June, really, because she was 86 and I was, I think, 76, something like that. I think it was 10 years different. And I thought, how on earth are the makeup people going to make me look okay next to June, you see? No, so I went to the makeup room, it is, and I said, "Hello, I'm Frank Barrie. I'm playing." Yes, we know. Welcome, Mr. Barrie. So I said, what do you think I need, you know, to be with June? And they looked at me and said, "You're fine." And that was it. No makeup. But June was getting, because she was 86, she was having trouble with the lines, of course, you know, you would. Very professional woman. She hated it. Some of the lines were escaping. And she was so proud. She wouldn't have what they call an idiot board. You know what that means?
Oh,
The
yes,
lines.
the lines of,
Yeah, a lot of people use it. Marlon Brando used it all the time.
He did, yeah.
But she didn't want to do that. So one of my happiest memories, really, is that whenever she went off the lines or something, I was able to rescue her. And she was always very sweet and very grateful, and we kept the scene going. So that was a lovely relationship for me. I did enjoy that. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of actors also had, particularly Marlon Brando, he would have lines written around the set on props, or so it kind of could try to be as natural as possible.
It's true. I think I did a Z class. You know, there's a whole list of things which I see here in my biography, and I can't really remember them. But I do remember Raymond Francis, I think he was called, who was in every episode of Z-Cast. And he used to have things written on the desk, written all over the place, you know. And you never knew. You never knew. He was such a clever actor.
Yeah. I think Marlon Brando's excuse was that he thought it made it more natural, because I think his argument was that in reality, we don't know what we're going to say from one moment to the next. So if you're kind of literally finding the lines, he felt that perhaps that helped the performance, but whether he was just didn't want to learn the lines, I don't know.
No, I think it's true, because Ralph Richardson, the great actor who nobody remembers, he said, "You must always be surprised by what you're saying." And it's a very good note.
Yeah. And how do you kind of do that as an actor?
Well, Derek Jacobi does this. He does a lot of, that kind of acting. He doesn't come in straight in cleanly with the line. Well, sometimes he does, of course. But these are technical things, and if they work for you, I suppose you've heard of Ellen Terry, who was a great Victorian actress, Edwardian actress. She was lauded and praised and idolized, really. But she was doing her new play, and a young director was directing her. And he was trying to get rid of all her mannerisms. You know, let's do pure acting. And saying, no, don't do that. You don't need to do that. That's what you do every time you appear. You don't have to do it. and so and so, so, so. Anyway, it got to the dress rehearsal, and she suddenly had too much of this, and she said, "And when do you want me to do all the little things that you're paying me so much money for?" Very grand. People, the audience, with great actors, or very good actors, you often love them for the little quirks, you want them to do that again, marvelous. Yeah. There you go.
One of your early, I think it was your first television credit was Emergency Ward 10. You did a few episodes of that. I don't know if you have any sort of lingering memories, because it was...
Oh, I have an extraordinary memory. I have an absolutely extraordinary memory. I was playing a doctor, Dr. Cook, an anaesthetist, and the director, Cecil Petty, I think he was called me in to his office. He said, "Frank, I feel I should let you know that in the storyline, one of your patients dies, and we're thinking of making it your fault. How would you feel about it?" He was very nervous. "How would you feel about that?" Nobody died in Emergency Ward 10. It was the first death. So I thought, what's he talking about? I said, "No, that's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's very interesting and very modern." They all want to be modern, very modern. So that was that. And somebody did die. And I got shoals of letters telling me it wasn't my fault. And it was. That's the funny thing. So that's my main memory of Emergency Ward 10.
Yeah. There was Peter Butterworth was in one of the episodes. Do you remember Peter Butterworth at all?
I do. And his son, lovely Tyler Butterworth. Yeah, Butterworth, he was a very nice guy.
Yeah.
And so is his son. I don't know if Tyler's given it up. But yeah, you see, he's one of those actors. You don't want him to be different. You want Butterworth to come on and do a Butterworth performance to you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you know him then?
I'm familiar with his work, and I think one of those great classical actors. Did you work with his son as well?
Tyler, yes, I did.
Yeah.
We did a movie, not a movie, Shakespeare, of Two Gentlemen of Verona. And Tyler was one of the two gentlemen. I played a part called Sir Eglamour, although I'd actually played Proteus before. Every time I can play a leading part in Shakespeare particularly, I grab it. When you get to my age, you're not going to be offered many parts. And you think, I can't do another Lear. I've done it, It's a sadness to me to say goodbye to these parts. There you go.
I suppose that they've always been traditionally age-specific, haven't they? A lot of the roles, until you get to, say, Ian McKellen doing Hamlet at 80. Well, what do you think about that?
What did she? Wasn't he? I didn't see him. I know him very well, actually, and I thought, how brave of him to do this. He's 80, and everybody was kind about it, but he must have lost the vulnerability of the part, and there's so much of that part as a young man, very young man. Anyway, he got away with it. Good luck to him.
I think people asked him a lot in interviews, in the lead up to it, aren't you a bit old for this role? And he had a very great response, was that when he played Gandalf, he was supposed to be 2,000 years old. So I'm 1,020 years too young for that, but nobody noticed. So why is? So I thought that was rather good. And
it's a marvelous reply. It's marvelous, isn't it? I was with him about 3 weeks ago. There was a wonderful party for the memory of one of the actors at the National. Oh dear, this is awful to forget his name. Very famous actor, and everybody was there. Famous people were there, all of them. It was more or less like a gathering of the National Theatre Company again. And Ian said to me, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I'm retired. And he said, yeah, but what are you doing? I said, well, going to parties. He said, no, you must be doing something. And that's very indicative of him. He loves working, work. He's doing a play now in the West End. He
Yeah,
doesn't like.
Percy. Yeah.
Yeah, have you seen it?
I saw it at Windsor.
Oh, is it good?
Just brilliant two-hander and very touching, and so much going on in the play. I did see his Hamlet as well, because that was at Windsor too.
Oh, what
and
did you think?
I thought it's fantastic. You do think, is this going to work? And of course, he's still got so much energy, so he was able to the set was on sort of two levels, and he was going up and down the gantry and moving around like somebody in his 30s, which helped. And I think you forget after a couple of minutes that it just melts away the age, and I thought he did it remarkably well.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I'm really thrilled to hear that. That's wonderful. What an achievement, eh? But again, it's Shakespeare. See, the Shakespeare supports you.
Oh yeah, you got wonderful dialogue and the characters to sort of.
Yes, yeah. But that's what I like about Ian, that he's bold, bold, and again, like you said, full of energy.
Yeah.
And he likes acting. Still likes acting. Can't wait to get home.
But it's not a job, is it, for people? For most actors, it's what you enjoy, and that's why they keep going till they drop. Like most of them.
Yeah. There was a famous actor at the National. I've forgotten his name as well. And we used to having conversations, backstage, and then it was his cue. So he said, "Right, now I'm going to do my hobby." That's how he thought of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned the National. I think was it around about 1969 you came to the National, and
69 to 73 or something like that. Yes. Wonderful parts. I was very, very lucky. My God, I was lucky. And what a wonderful company. We did think we were the best company in the world. Not in an arrogant way, but because we were directed by undoubtedly the greatest actor in the world, Olivier. And he treated us all so generously, If you had to do a scene with him, he didn't try and grab the focus or anything. He just gave it to you. Remarkable. And everybody was very dedicated, and we felt pretty honored that we were there. Yeah.
And would he sort of audition new members a lot of the time, or did you have other people that you would entrust that to join the company?
Well, he would work on their suggestions, and he saw me play Richard II at Bristol, and that must have had some influence on it. I can't remember, 1969. But I just think that whatever he said about your acting, and he said something really rather good to me. We were doing a play called The White Devil, that's right. And he came to rehearsal, and I said to him, "Sir," we all called him Sir. He'd say to us, "Oh, call me Larry." But we just couldn't, And anyway, I said to him, "Sir, this line, I don't know what to do with it." And he said, "Where's the script?" Right. Well, if you don't know what to do with it, do nothing. Now, that's brilliant advice, isn't it? Just let the line speak itself. So I was grateful for that. And lots of things. And then he saw me playing Mirabelle at the National in Where the World. And then he came around and he said, "Oh, very, very good. But there's no need to swish your cloak every time you go off." I didn't have a cloak. That was very perceptive. You see why we loved someone like that.
Yeah.
They took us seriously. He was like Dad. I think it'd be fair to say we all felt he was our dad.
Yeah. Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
You did work, I think, with Christopher Plummer. Do you remember working with Christopher Plummer?
Yeah, Crystal was Chris. There was something else we had to call him. He was a bit difficult to be honest. A marvelous actor, but he used to appear. He used to come to rehearsals, and in those days we rehearsed in Aquinas Street, and they were kind of like wartime tin huts, very unpretentious. This is the National Theatre of Great Britain, and he used to drive in a grey Rolls Royce, with a chauffeur with a grey uniform and a cap. And when the car stopped, and the chauffeur would get out of the car, walk around it, and open the door for Mr. Plummer. Now, we weren't impressed with this at all. We thought it was really showing off in a terrible way. You know, we're actors, for Christ's sake. And one day I said to him, how can you afford all this then, kit? That's what we had to call it. How can you afford all this kit? Sound of Music. I said, what do you mean? Did you get a lot of money from Sound of Music? Got a percentage. That wasn't that clever. Multi-millionaire. Yeah. But he was, yes, he'd come to play Coriolanus. And it was directed by the German ensemble players, how awful to forget, who did Brecht. And they wanted to repeat their version of Coriolanus. And poor old Plummer, Kit, wasn't told this. And so he'd come along, he'd worked very hard, he'd learnt all the lines, you know, and etc., and was ready to go. And suddenly he was told, no, we don't want any of that. We want this, this, and this. So there was a big bust up. And so he didn't play Coriolanus. And lovely Tony Hopkins played it and had a big success. Wonderful actor, Tony Hopkins, wonderful. When I worked with him at the National, he was drinking a lot. And I had a scene with him when I came, a Woman Killed with Kindness. And I used to come on the scene, and I never knew where he was going to be. He sort of just took the moment. I have to say I didn't mind this at all, because he was so interesting, such a wonderful, creative actor. So I didn't mind that. But anyway, so Tony Hopkins played Coriolanus, and Kit Plummer agreed to play Danton in Danton's Death. And it's about the French Revolution, as you might guess. And I was playing Camille Desmoulins, a rather sympathetic part. Camille has a great long speech about a nightmare he's just had, and we're in prison. And Kit used to keep sort of pushing me and say, during my speech, and say, oh, come on, oh, come on. And I thought that was a bit unfriendly, really. Yeah. Sir Laurence would never have done that. If it was your turn, it was your turn. Yeah.
Well, when you're doing a play for a reasonable long run, do you have to find ways to kind of make it continue to be interesting to yourself in terms of changing it, or kind of sort of, even if it's small, how do you kind of deal with 8 shows a week and keeping it as fresh as it was the first day?
I think you've hit it, really. You find some little thing that you're going to change. And sometimes it's better than the thing you've been doing. But it's something to look forward to, you know. But I never get bored. No, that's true. I don't get bored. There's always interesting challenges to do. And you can't get bored with an audience there. My God.
Yeah.
Just get over it if you are bored. Jolly want to change it.
I saw Simon Callow doing Being Shakespeare, his one-man
Oh,
show,
it's
and afterwards there was a talk, and somebody asked him, how did you get bored doing all the, all the time? And he said, he never gets it. He didn't feel that he ever got it entirely right. So for every night
yes,
he was kind of improving upon himself.
he's very modest. I love Simon. He's our new president of the Max Wall Society. Max Wall was a comedian who
Oh,
I knew. I was a founder member of this Max Wall Society, and Simon's our new president. And we'd had lots of wonderful presidents. Um, Ken Dodd, uh, 3 or 4 great comedians, but we asked. Ken actually died, Sir Ken,
yeah.
and there was a lot of who shall we invite, who shall we invite. So some of us who knew Simon, who was multi-talented and writes wonderful books. He's a highly, I don't know what the word is, but he's good at everything.
Hmm.
He's good at everything, and a very kind and sweet man. And he came along, and just a few months ago, we had a meeting when he was sort of, we were welcoming him, a dinner. And I spoke to him before. He said, I'm really nervous. I'm really nervous because they'll all be expecting to get lots of laughs and everything. I said, no, I think you'll cope, Simon. I really think you'll cope. And he did cope by doing a very original thing. He didn't come on with a lot of gags like the others did. Brilliant, by the way, but that was what they did. And he discussed with us what it was about Max's comedy. Why did we like this sort of comedy? So he drew his audience in. And then there were a few big laughs. So he had a big success. He was in the box office, when I was at the National. That was his job.
Right.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. No.
Oh yeah, he was determined to get to the National Theatre, and he'd written to Sir Laurence and said, "I've loved seeing the plays at the National Theatre, and I want to work there. Is there any chance I can?" And Sir Laurence contacted him and said, "Yes, you can have a job in the box office." And he did do the job in the box office. And I remember he used to come into the canteen, which is really for actors, but he was always there. And he was always such an interesting person, very fizzing with ideas, very intellectual and all that, and a lovely person. I'm glad you mentioned Simon. Yes, I did see his playing Shakespeare, and I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, it was very good, wasn't it? He did a similar thing for Charles Dickens as well, which I thought was.
He did. That's
good.
wonderful. And another one, a part I played twice, Scrooge in the thing, and he did the whole of that piece. Why have I forgotten the name of it? What's it called? Scrooge in Charles Dickens'
Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol. Thank you very much. I've also directed it in America, and I love it. But he did it as a one-person show on television in an empty house. Went from room to room, and it was stunningly good. Yeah.
I saw Patrick Stewart do a one-man Christmas Carol that he adapted, and he played all the characters, and that was fantastic.
Yes, it was. I used to know Patrick. I've lost touch with him, but he was at Bristol when I joined, and he played Shylock, and I think he was only 23 or something, and I was Antonio in that. And he didn't look much different then from what he does now, because he was bald at the age of 23. Brilliant actor.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So fantastic. Oh, you mentioned Ken Dodd. I did see Ken Dodd do his comedy show. It was he came down to Torquay, and he was obviously very famous for his long shows, and I was secretly hoping, it's not telling my my wife that how long he might go on for, and he ended up doing over 5.5 hours, I think it was.
Oh, did he? My God, he's astonishing. No, I think he was definitely a genius, And when he was made our president, I had to introduce him. I had to say to the it was a rather grand dinner, Maxwell Society in the Liberal Club in the West End, and I had to say, and he'd just been knighted, so I said, I'd like to welcome you, Sir Ken. The Queen loves you, the public loves you, even juries love you, because he'd been let off, the tax scandal.
Yeah.
I loved that because he was clearly guilty. There was money hidden away in suitcases, but the jury loved him, so he was let off.
Yeah,
that's marvelous.
A lot of it is public perception, isn't it? It's especially as an actor, if people don't love you, that's kind of it, really.
Well, he was a genius, and I think you've just got to make allowances for genius. You've got to be grateful it's there. And if they've done one or two things and not so good, well, what a shame. As long as they don't harm people,
Well, yes, that's right. Yes, I think people have people are good at certain things. Sometimes that means they're not good at other things, or their attention is not on other things, and it's not deliberate. It's just being caught up in this, this storm that is whatever your gift is, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're right.
There were a couple of names I just wanted to quickly mention. You worked with Linda Forsen. I don't know if you remember working with Linda.
I do. She was lovely. And we're still in touch. And we did another play together last year, I think it was. And she's still beautiful. A lovely, lovely woman. She was Titania, and I was Oberon in Regent's Park. And the costumes we were given were just leaves. She had 3 leaves. She had 3 leaves, and I had 1. And they were very revealing, these costumes. A nun came 3 times to see the show and was disgusted every time. And they took a photograph of us together, Linda and me, all in an embrace. I think it was the Daily Mail, and there was a competition to find out the best caption for this movie of us with the leaves. And the one that won was, "Can't wait for autumn."
Yeah, that's a good one.
But now Linda's a very interesting person. She was a great athlete. She's Canadian, She taught our daughter how to swim.
Oh, wow.
Terrific. Yeah. Very interesting, very bright. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a couple of events with Linda, so we're hoping to do another one end of next month, perhaps. So
with Linda.
Yeah, we've done a couple of Avengers things together. So
oh, you have? Oh, marvelous! Is she in England now?
I think she's in Canada at the moment. I think she's waiting on to know, because she still works an awful lot. So she's either going to be in London in October or on a job if it works out. So so she.
Well, I must look her up. I mean, we're in touch. I did this play, and she came here, with Andrew Wincott. Lovely. Yeah, I love Linda. She's a trooper. If she's feeling ill or whatever, you'd never know. On she comes, and thrilled you. And thrilled you know her. Yeah, great.
I found it quite interesting that a nun came 3 times to the play and was. Obviously, she was disgusted in a good way, it sounds like.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I love being in Regent's Park, actually.
Yeah.
It's on the nights when it's fair, it's just magic. Of course, sometimes it pours with rain, and the public won't leave. They all put up their umbrellas, so you're going to go on acting.
Well, the one thing I did wanted to ask you about was, of course, your episode of The Adventurer. I don't know if you got a chance to have a look.
Yes, I remember the Adventurer, but I only had a small part in it, and but we had to go to Wuppertal to do the filming, and Wuppertal is a place in Germany who has a monorail. And that's why we had to do it there. I think I was playing a villain or something. And when we got there, we were told, yes, you could use the monorail. We'd had permission, but you could only use it for 5 minutes every hour because it's got to go around again. So we spent, and I don't know how it worked out. I've never watched it, but we started in the daylight, and the last bit was at night in the dark, and it's the same scenes. I don't know how they coped with that. I have no idea. That's my main memory of it. It was directed by Val somebody.
Val Guest.
Val Guest. Did you know Val Guest?
I didn't, and I've known a lot of people that worked with him, but I never got to talk to him, unfortunately.
Are you in the business? You're in it, really, aren't you?
Well, it's my passion, and I've got a day job that sort of fuels the passion. That's sort of how it works, really. But yeah, I used to know a lady called Renee Glynn, who she was a script supervisor, and she worked with Val quite a lot. So I heard a lot of stories about Val from her.
Well, he's nice, and I knew his wife very well, an American, Yolandi Donlan, and I did a play with her, Windsor, with Peter Bowles and other well-known people, and the director of the play, Donald McKechnie, gave her a move that she didn't like. I don't like this move. And he insisted that she did it. And on the first night, she said her line and then said, move upstage, sit on sofa, lousy move. That was her revenge. The audience is totally puzzled and know what she was talking about. But she got her revenge. Val Guest, yes. I think I did something else with him and I can't remember. You know, sometimes you just do one day. I mean, when I did, I had 2 words to say in what's that play where women take their clothes off? Calendar Girls. A lovely, lovely film. And I had 2 lines to say in that, but I do remember it because when I arrived on the set, it was just myself and the star, whose name, a lovely, lovely woman, Helen, is it Helen? Anyway, big star. How awful, I keep forgetting people's names. And I arrived feeling a bit silly with my one line, you know, but she put her arms around me and said, oh, Frank, thank you for doing this. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
I feel awful to forget her name. She's really big star.
Mirren?
Yes, Helen. Helen Mirren. Lovely, lovely girl. And I thought, and when I did say my line, which is hello, ladies, that's all it is, she laughed. And I said to her, please don't laugh. That's very unprofessional. That's a happy memory I have of that film, and it's constantly shown.
Oh yeah, yes, one of those sort of cult classics, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
My final question, Frank. Apart from the projects you already mentioned, do you have a particular favourite or a particular time in your life in which you were perhaps the most happy with your work?
Well, it would have to be Macready, because it took me all around the world, and it was all my own work. It would have to be that. But I've enjoyed so many things. I've been extremely happy in my job and the people I meet. Very, very happy. Yeah.
And yeah, it's a wonderful career, and thank you for sharing so much with me this evening. It's been great. It
has been great. You're a very good interviewer.
Oh,
you actually listen, and a lot of interviewers don't, you know.
Oh,
you actually listen to what people say.
Oh, that's very kind. It's nice to it's nice to have some feedback like that. That's lovely.
Yeah, it's been grand to meet you. Well, I think you're terrific, Phil, and and I hope we meet.
Oh, that would be lovely. Yes.
Well, parting is such sweet sorrow. And I hope we meet again, Phil. It's been very, very enjoyable.
Lovely chat, you, Frank. Have a great week. Take care.
And you. What do we do now?
Oh, I'll end the meeting.
You end it. Okay. Au revoir. Adios.
Au revoir. Bye.
Arrivederci.
Perfect. Lovely.
Well, we made it.
Oh yes, yeah.
Have you had a good day?
Yeah, not bad. How about you?
Yeah, okay. I've been looking up my result for ancestry. Have you ever done this, the DNA thing?
No, I have thought about it though.
It's a bit vague, actually. I'm 73% British and Scandinavian nations, 11% Welsh, and then mysteriously, the rest is various places. Don't know what I've got to do about that. Anyway, who cares? Here we are.
Yes. Perfect. Okay, lovely. Yes, so thank you very much, Frank, for joining me just to have a bit of a wrap up from last time. I had a couple of theatre questions I didn't quite get to.
Right.
I wanted to ask you about the lives and loves of Edith Wharton, which had Gail Honeycutt in. Do you remember Gail and the production?
Oh, she's a very, very great friend, and so sad that she has died 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to the funeral actually next week. Now, Gail Honeycutt, you must look her up because she's one of the great beauties of the age. A very, very beautiful woman. She was married to David Hemmings at first. Then she married Simon Jenkins, who was the editor of the Times. And she had this idea that she wanted to do an evening about. Are we on now?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, that she was very caught up with the story of Edith Wharton, who wrote those wonderful novels. And she asked me if I would cooperate with her. So I did. She got one writer who didn't really work out. So I wrote it. And its format is me as all the men in her life. And she plays Edith Wharton. She looked absolutely stunning when she did it. And she was adored. We did it all over the world, actually. And she was adored by the audience. Edith Wharton was a rather spiky character in some ways. But Gail, when she's such a gorgeous personality and so warm and charming and everything. So I soon gave up trying to do that. I was directing it, and as well as being in it. And she came on, did a big smile at the audience. They all melted, and so I let her do it her way, of course, as a director always should. But I mourn Gail. I'm going to speak actually at her funeral.
Oh, how wonderful! Yeah.
Yes, lovely woman. So that's that. Very interesting show actually. We played it all around America, and also Saudi Arabia, lots of Arab countries. It always went very well. And the one I remember most was when it played in Fort Worth, Texas, because that's where Gail is from. And they went crazy for her there. It was wonderful. There were queues around the block, because the great lady had come home. She did a lot of films. Do look her up. She's very beautiful. Okay.
I am familiar with her work slightly in some of her TV guest appearances.
Yes.
Turn the Man from Uncle and A Return of the Sage. And I've been trying to find her for a couple of years actually, and could never find anybody that kind of. I think she kind of sort of disappeared from the limelight a little bit last.
Well, she had to, because she had mental problems, and she's had mental problems for 5 years in a special home. It's tragic, really. Her mother had the same thing. I don't think it's quite manic depressive. It's got some title that I can't make sense of. But when I go and see her, she did go and see her, she seemed quite rational to me. She goes in and out of these terrible stages. And towards the end, she refused to eat anything and gradually died. Her two sons have been wonderful to her. She was wonderful to them. And Simon Jenkins, he was knighted, by the way. He's Sir Simon Jenkins. So she was Lady Jenkins, but she didn't like that. She couldn't bear titles. She said, I'm Gail Honeycutt, and that's the name. So that was Gail. How interesting you brought that up.
Yeah. Yes, sounds very nice, down-to-earth lady. Yeah.
Very, very.
I wanted to mention also the Admiral Crichton that you
Yes.
did in, I think it was...
I did. I played that with Gail, actually,
but as well, yeah.
At Greenwich, when Greenwich was a great theatre in those days. It's all gone downhill, I'm afraid. But everybody anybody would work there, you know, it was absolutely marvellous. And she played Lady Mary, that the Admiral Crichton, played by me, falls in love with. It's a lovely play. It's by J.M. Barrie. I directed a show about J.M. Barrie, by the way, starring John Fraser, and that played all over the place. And it's a lovely story. It's about a posh family with the butler, and they get shipwrecked, and there's on a desert island, and there's no rescue yet. And so everybody starts being bossed about in a very subtle way by the butler, Crichton. He's quite admirable. And they start treating him like a king. You know, they crown him and everything. And he falls in love with Lady Mary, and Lady Mary falls in love with him, and it's all wonderful. And then suddenly we hear the horn of a passing liner, and they're rescued. So the next act is when they're back in London, everything's gone back. It's all about the class system, really. So that's it, a charming play. Yeah.
I haven't seen the play, but I did many years ago see the film with Kenneth More. And
yeah, it's a lovely film. It's absolutely lovely. And he's terribly good in it. And Diane Cilento, who I worked with, plays Lady Mary. No, she doesn't. She plays Tweenie, the maid. And that's who he ends up with, because that's his class.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a charming film. Very nicely done. Cecil Parker's in it. Lovely cast, yeah. Diane Cilento, I think she was in... Yes, she was. We did a play there called The Artful Widow. And she was very, very, very good, but a little bit undisciplined. Diane's died now. But I know we were doing that at, I'm just remembering all this. We were doing that at Greenwich. And our cleaner, Mrs. Taff, she's called, had never been to the theatre in her life. And so I thought, well, this is a really nice play. She'll enjoy seeing this, you know. So I got her tickets and everything. And she came along, and then Diane didn't turn up. She just didn't turn up. She'd forgotten she was performing. And so they had to cancel the performance. There were no understudies. And I met Mrs. Taff in the bar, and she said to me, "Don't you do it then when you don't feel like it?" No, and I was so ashamed. So I don't know if Mrs. Taff ever went to see anything else. But the Admiral Crichton, she didn't make. There you go.
Was she? I may think of somebody else. Was she married to Sean Connery at one point?
She was.
Yeah.
And her little boy Jason was in the dressing room all the time. Nice boy. He became an actor.
Yeah.
And I think he did very well for a bit. I don't quite know what he's doing now.
Yeah, I know one of the Connery brothers did sort of do James Bond spoofs and things of that nature. So I'm not quite sure if that was Jason. It might have been.
Jason did a series when he was Robin Hood.
Yeah,
he was Robin Hood, I think.
Yeah.
But I only knew him as a little boy.
Yeah, I think he did it was Neil Connery, Sean Connery's brother. I'm thinking of, that did the spoofs. I think Jason, did a Doctor Who in the 80s. Anything that I can think of him.
Yeah. I actually did a test for 007
right.
when Connery had gone out of it, and they were interviewing loads of young actors for it. And I did a film test. You had to do a love scene with a girl, that was all right. And then a fight. And in the filming, the man who choreographed the fight was the other fighter. And I brought my knee up at the wrong time and knocked him out. So I don't think that helped me get the part. The part went to a male model called something Lazenby. And he didn't get on with the leading lady at all. She couldn't stand him because he wasn't an experienced actor, you know. The filming took so long to finish. George Lazenby, that's his name.
George, yes.
Yeah. And his leading lady in that, I know her actually. She was in the Avengers.
Diana Rigg.
Diana Rigg, yeah. Someone else who's died. It's awful when you get to my age. Most of your friends have gone. But actually, they all said how terrible he was. But I saw the film and he was sort of okay, you know.
Yeah.
You don't have to be that good to play 007. You just have to have the right personality. Because the real acting is done by all the machines and the cars and the rest of it. Rather marvelous films. I enjoy them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're very good films. I think there's more call for acting chops in the later films than perhaps when you say you were kind of sort of, you know, brushing shoulders with it. Interesting you mentioned that you hurt the stuntman, because that's George Lazenby during his screen test broke his nose. So whether it's the same guy or he's having a terrible time, and I think it was because it was probably a bit more dramatic than what you did. That was one of the things that sold them on Lazenby, being that this is a guy who can really sort of rough them up. So
it did him good, did it?
Yeah, you should have made him bleed or something.
No, I think you've got to be very, very careful when you're doing fights. Certainly in the theatre, of course, you can fake them when it's films, but in the theatre you've got to be very, very careful. And the first stage fight I did was absolutely brilliant, very showy, and it was choreographed by Paddy Crane, who was a famous fight director, and he did all the fights for the Errol Flynn films. And in some of the long shots, it's actually Paddy Crane doing the sword fighting. A lovely man, very, very British, talk like this, you know, very, very charming. And he did a wonderful fight for me, jumping off tables and, you know, the lot. Very, very showy. And I went round America in that part, Mercutio in Romeo and Juliet. Lovely. And then, that was the part I was playing when they asked me to sign this is getting rather glitzy. They asked me to sign a 7-year film contract with Universal Studios, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't think I'd be very good, actually. That was the truth of it. But also, you weren't offered any wonderful parts. And at that stage in my life, I wanted to play all the great parts.
Oh, yeah.
Life's full of choices. You know, if you're an actor, you never know what the right thing to do is.
Yeah.
You bang about. And people sometimes say to you, why did you want to play that part? And the only honest answer is, well, it was the only one offered me, actually. So I played it.
Yeah, I think the thing of actors is being people that when you say, why did you get a role, and they expect all kinds of artistic reasons, and it's actually, well, you know, that paid more than that job, you know. Or
yes, exactly.
Things, so.
I had to buy a house. That's what you said.
Yeah.
I think that's why I did the American tour, because I had to buy a house.
There was a quote I read about my. So go on, Frank.
I said, what better motivation, eh? Well, people say, what were your motives for playing this part? Well, the rent.
Yeah. I saw an old interview clip with Michael Caine recently, and he was being interviewed about the Jaws film we did, Jaws 4: The Revenge, and it was a terrible film. The interviewer said, why on earth did you do that, film, being an actor of his caliber? And he said, well, because it's awful. And Michael said, well, I've never seen the film, but I've seen the house that the money bought my mother, and it's marvelous. Well, that was a very good answer to the
That's
question.
a fabulous answer. Really
Mm.
fabulous. He was a very nice man. I did a film called Jekyll and Hyde
Yeah.
with him, and I was his butler.
Mm.
And he was very gracious and very nice and jolly and very professional.
Mm.
Came along, knew his lines and everything, didn't make a fuss, just got on with it. Nice guy.
Because that
Yeah.
had quite a glitzy cast, didn't it? So it must be quite
Yes,
an interesting production.
it did. I've forgotten the girl's name. She was a big name at the time. But Michael was a bit naughty. I've just suddenly realized something. When he was Hyde, he had to turn into Terrible Ugly Thing, and he was billed as playing both parts, Jekyll and Hyde.
Right.
But Michael really didn't want to do all that makeup because it took 4 hours for the poor guy who was his standby. His standby played it. And Michael gave interviews afterwards saying, oh, the makeup was so exhausting for me. I had to get up at 3 a.m. and I was there in the makeup chair. And it was all fibs because he didn't do it. Very sensible.
Mm.
I think he had a great sense of humor and made himself laugh,
Yeah, yeah. I was just having a look at the cast for it, and you had, of course, Joss Ackland, Diane
Yes.
Keane, Cheryl
Ronnie
Ladd,
Picker. Oh, Alan
Cheryl Ladd.
Cheryl Ladd, yeah, very
Yeah.
pretty girl.
Mm.
Ronnie Pickup was in it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, it was lovely to do. Very, very nice direction.
Mm.
And they all kept telling me, I was on it, I think, for 6 weeks or something. And they all kept telling me, oh, you're wonderful in this part. You're marvelous in this part. And I started believing it. And I wasn't. When I saw the film, I don't know if they cut me or what, but I seemed to have a very small part. So it wasn't one of my triumphs, I'm afraid.
Mm.
But fun to do.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just finishing up on the thought about Bond, is I've met George Lazenby at a couple of events,
Really?
and he's not well, he's a bit of a difficult character, shall we say, and not one of my favorite human beings. So I think I
Yeah.
would have much preferred you in the role. I think
That's the right thing to say.
Yeah.
But Phil, how do you meet all these people then? You're not quite in the business, are you? I remember you saying you organised looking after people who were caring. Is that right?
Yes. So my day job is I do equipment and training and other bits and pieces for a care company. So that's how I learn my living, what little there is of it.
Right.
My hobby has always been sort of film and TV, and my dad used to take me when I was sort of about 12, 13 to conventions at Pinewood Studios, Bond conventions. They can't do
Yeah.
them anymore because of Disney's taking over and made it, kicked everybody out, etc. But you get to meet certain people, the crew and the cast,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
um,
At
and it was
Pinewood.
and there's
Yeah.
also they do various other conventions around the country from time to time, and they did a big event for the 50th of Majesty's Secret Service, and they did an event in Portugal and Switzerland. And me and my wife and I were thought this is a nice sort of pre-wedding sort of thing to do. So because we got married in November, so in the summer we went to this event and we got to see George Lazenby and have dinner with members of the cast and stuff, and that's when you get to realize that George isn't somebody you really want to rely on particularly. So it's just a few little things that kind of happened that I think most fans are aware of, but I probably won't repeat. But you do get to, I've been quite privileged to meet quite interesting people, and through this as well, people like yourself, and some people have even invited me over to their houses because they don't do online stuff, so they still come and record an interview
What fun.
at my house, and that's been fun as well. So
Yeah, what fun.
Mm.
Who's going to be next after me? Have you booked anybody?
I've got a couple of things. I've done a couple of events with Ian Ogilvy for Return of the Saint, and
Ian Ogilvy. Yeah.
Ian Ogilvy, yeah.
Oh, lovely chap.
Um,
I knew his mother better than him.
oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, charming woman.
Yeah.
She wouldn't take any of her diamond. She was rich. She wouldn't take any of the diamond rings off ever. So if she was playing, like when I did Pygmalion, she was playing the housekeeper. The rings were just covered in plasters, because she wouldn't take them off in case they were stolen.
Yeah.
Zocking great diamond.
Makes sense, yeah. You never kind of really know who's the next person, you see, because you talk to somebody like Tony Guyatt, and Lionel Guyatt, and he will then, your name will pop up, and so sometimes it's interesting. I managed to speak to Robert Wagner and Malcolm McDowell through other people who were friends, and suddenly you're interviewing somebody you never kind of thought you'd speak to. So it's quite interesting.
Quite really funny. Did you know Gary Raymond at all? Do you know Gary Raymond? Does that mean anything to you?
I have tried to get him, but I haven't been successful.
I don't think he likes doing interviews at all. He's a very close friend. He and his wife, Delina Kidd. Delina was in the Avengers for a bit, and I was speaking to her today, and she said, I said to her, are you being paid? She said, no, nothing. But they're only interviewing me because I'm the last person alive who was in this episode of the Avengers. Oh my God. Anyway,
well, she sounds quite interesting. If Gary doesn't want to do it,
very interesting. She's very interesting. Yeah. And I tell you who you might like to interview: an actor called Gareth Armstrong.
Right.
Gareth is an old friend, and I directed his show called Shylock, which is a one-person show. And it went all around the world. So he's got interesting things to talk about. Gareth Armstrong. Yeah.
Look him up.
He's touring it now, I think, somewhere.
I suppose we can't get Ian McKellen and Jacobi or people like that, I suppose.
Well, no, I don't think they would agree.
No.
They're very nice people.
Yeah.
But, they're very busy.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's not necessarily they're not nice enough. I think they've just got so much, they've got bigger fish than me to sort of occupy them, haven't they? Really, but
it's very difficult because if I've always been rather relieved that I'm not famous because it's a burden. It really is.
I think it probably would be. Yeah.
When I've had my bits of fame, and when I was in Eastenders, when I go abroad, I'm famous as anything because they all think, well, he must be famous, or he wouldn't be being sent abroad, would he? That's very nice. But I know when I was in Eastenders, I was the boyfriend of Dot, June Brown, and I couldn't go into Sainsbury's, I'd be mobbed. I couldn't go into Lidl, I'd be mobbed. I couldn't go into any supermarket, but I was okay in Waitrose because nobody watches it. Did I tell you about being in EastEnders?
You did, yeah. I thought that was quite a funny story. Yes, that'll be. I definitely believe in that one. Yes.
I enjoyed it actually. I really did. June was lovely. Anyway, there you go.
So I was just for a final theatre question was just you mentioned stage fights and things like that, and of course probably sword fighting, have to be particularly careful. But has there been anything that's kind of maybe not say go wrong, but just performance where perhaps there's been a lot of laughter and it's been also just some things where it's been really pushed, touch and go in terms of getting through something?
Yes. I remember in Macbeth, I played Macbeth twice, love it. There was, he has two fights. Things go very wrong in Macbeth for all sorts of reasons. One is that the leading actor's tired by the end. He's got to do two fights. The other is it's normally pretty dark because there are references to darkness. And it was young Seaward, that's right. I was doing a fight with young Seaward, very, very good fighter, by the way. And I'm quite a good fighter. And it was with a sword and a dagger. And one of the things, I had to go for his neck like this with the dagger, and he had to go like that. And as the dagger came to it, he went like that. And the dagger cut here. And I heard I felt the pressure. And he ran off stage, and he was supposed to die on stage. And I thought, oh, Christ, what have I done? You know. But I went on, because you do in the theatre. What else can you do? Don't suddenly stop and say, I'm really sorry, something's gone wrong. You have to, and I could think of nothing else but this. Had he been injured, and then we just went on with the play. And afterwards, he was sort of all right. He'd cut here, but I thought, and I saw him fairly recently, many years later, and he's still got a scar there. And you just feel terrible yourself, you know. Thank God he did survive all right. But sometimes there's the bad luck thing about Macbeth is largely true. Things have happened, terrible things have happened. That's the only thing that's happened to me on stage. But when I was playing Macbeth on a long tour of Iraq, did I mention this before? No. We played Iraq, and the first performance we gave was extraordinary. We'd been asked beforehand, I just remember it, we'd been asked beforehand to let the Iraqi government censors have a copy of the play. And I said to our director, well, we've had it now, because they'd all realized it's all about a murderous tyrant who kills his own people. Saddam Hussein was still in charge. But they obviously hadn't read it, you know, because they said, yes, you can come. And we went and we gave this first performance at the National Theatre of Iraq, I've forgotten its name, I think Mustan Syria, something like that. Full house in Baghdad. And they were pretty noisy audience. I'd been to Iraq before, I was used to them. They move about a lot, walk up, you know, wave to their friends. But suddenly, after about 20 minutes, they were suddenly gripped by the play. And all this stopped. And we could hear sighs and groans. And, they were living it, you know, because they were relating it to their own situation. And at the end, there was tremendous applause, fantastic applause, and ululating and banging on with their feet. And one was really just struck how extraordinary it was that this 400-year-old play had this effect. Anyway, we went back to our hotel, and the next morning, the British ambassador came to see us. And he said, I'm afraid I got some bad news for you. The secret police were watching the play last night, and they've absolutely forbidden you to perform it again. Isn't that extraordinary?
Yeah.
The power of that play is still working. But my Lady Macbeth on that, a brilliant actress, she'd been Actress of the Year before, actually, got an Olivier Award. I've forgotten her name now. This is awful. Anne something. A rather difficult woman, but very good actress. But she wanted everybody to be running around after her all the time. And I was in my in the bath in my hotel, and she was in the same hotel. And she rang me up, and I'm in the bath. And I jumped out of the bath because the telephone went. I didn't know who it was, and I don't know why I jumped out of the bath. I was an idiot. And I skidded across the floor and bashed my knee and broke the patella or damaged the patella. And anyway, I crawled back to the telephone, and it was this actress saying, would I ring the management and say that the water wasn't warm enough in her, her room? And I did. I did ring the management. And then I thought, oh my God, something's terrible happened. It's the curse of Macbeth. Because I was pained, that was painful all night, terrible, terrible pain. So they took me to a hospital, and the surgeon said, I think you must not act anymore, this play. We put some plaster on you, plaster here. So I was in plaster from my hips to my ankle. And I said, well, I just do have to. We don't have an understudy. I've got to play this part, you know. So he said, well, it's your decision. So I did play the part. I remember that there were announcements made. Ladies and gentlemen, both in English and Arabic. Ladies and gentlemen, we are sorry to tell you that Mr. Frank Barrie, who plays Macbeth, has been injured. Groans. His left leg is in plaster. He cannot do everything he would like to do, but he will do his best for you. Cheers. So I did. And there were, I think, 3 more weeks, and I went on doing this, and it was silly of me, really, because in the fullness of time, because I'd had to walk in a strange way just to make sense of the fact that I'd got a plaster on my leg. In the fullness of time, this paid off because something misplaced something in my spine. And I was in hospital just last year for 11 weeks after a spinal operation. And they rang my wife up after the operation and said, we're sorry to tell you, Mrs. Barrie, that he will never walk again. Can you imagine? My wife felt she was poleaxed, you know. It was a terrible thing to say. I don't know why he said it. He shouldn't have said it. Anyway, I was determined that I wasn't going to become disabled in a wheelchair. So I did all the exercises you have to do, physio, you know. Like a mad thing, actually. I was doing far more exercises than they told me to do, but I was just determined to get better. And I have got better. I can walk about, not as swiftly as I'd like to, but I'm all right. But that's the curse of Macbeth years later.
Yes. Yeah.
They're extraordinary.
Yeah.
There was a time in history where a chap at Oldham, an Oldham rep, was murdered on stage by accident in the sword fight, dead.
Yeah. Terrible.
The curse of Macbeth. It's a wonderful part. I love the part.
Yeah. I suppose like any superstitions, there's always some truth behind it, isn't it? So some logic to it. Of course, as we've gone through, it's clear to see why.
Yes, you're right. You're right. There's usually a reason, actually. Like you mustn't whistle in the theatre, and that's because scene changes used to be done by sailors who were used to doing the ropes and everything. And if they got a whistle, you know, one whistle for bring the scene up, another one for bring it down. So you can't confuse the sailors who are working the things.
Yeah, fascinating. Yes. I did have a couple of questions regarding some TV appearances. So it may be that if you don't remember them, we can just sort of quickly go through them. But you did an episode of Gazette with an actor called John Lorrimore. I wonder if you have any recollections of either the show or John.
You know, I don't. Isn't this awful? John Lorrimore, wasn't it John Stride?
I think he might also have been in. Let me just have a. Let me just check and work it out.
Yeah.
Because it's always difficult to know exactly what sticks in people's minds and what doesn't really.
Yeah, sure.
But Let's have a little look.
Sure. Did I tell you, you asked me about The Adventurer. Did we talk about that?
We did mention it briefly. I did have a couple of minor sort of follow-ups to that.
Yes.
So the Gazette was a lady called Gillian Ray, Michael Blackham, Reginald Barrett, John Murray Scott, David Robinson, Edward Bennett, Bill Plinkerton. So it might not be maybe not that particular episode, but it might have been.
Must have been another episode.
Might be another episode.
Yeah. Because I don't usually forget everybody.
I just mentioned John because you happen to be a well-known Doctor Who guest star, so I thought I'd just see if.
Oh right, I've never done Doctor Who. That was a mistake. If you've done Doctor Who, you go to these conventions, and you sit at the table. You know all about this, I assume.
Oh yes,
and people pay for you to do a sign
photograph. The fan, yeah.
It's been the salvation of a lot of actors. Yes. Oh, I just remembered. I was working with the London Shakespeare group in Nova Scotia, and there was an actor in it called Arthur Cox, very good actor, not well known, but very, very fine actor. And he wanted to go to the local museum in Nova Scotia. So I said, oh, I'll go with you. I'm interested. I love museums. And as we were walking along to the museum, I was making conversation, and I said, Arthur, you're a marvelous actor. Does it worry you that you're not terribly well known? And he said, well, yes, it does a bit. I just love a bit of fame. So I said, well, you're certainly worth it. And then we got to the museum, and we went to the desk to buy a ticket. And the guy behind the desk said, Arthur Cox, Doctor Who, episode 342. Which was wonderful for Arthur.
Yeah.
He was walking on air after that. Yeah. Anyway, but you see, you can make a few quid if you're out of funds.
I think even actors that don't need the money these days go to conventions. They just announced Kit Harington for this winter, and he's charging £125 per signature.
Is he?
Yeah.
My God, isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Do people actually pay that?
Well, my wife wanted to. My wife would have paid it gladly, but thankfully she's in Australia. That she got a conflict of schedule, but people do, and that's not necessarily the most expensive people, So, I went to an event where Buzz Aldrin was there, and he bought his own credit card machine. He would charge, and there was different tiers where you wanted a dedication, what kind of item it was. It had other Apollo 11 astronauts on. It was different prices, and I thought, my God, I don't know. I didn't bother with them really. I'm not too worried about. I quite like meeting behind the scenes people, directors, stunt people.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of them, so it's nice to talk to bigger names as well. But I they don't need the money. Some of them don't. But
isn't that extraordinary? But you see, actors never think they've made it. Financially, it can all go wrong suddenly.
Well, I suppose that they're thinking, well, I will go just in case it goes pear.
Yeah. Bit of insecurity there, so we'll have a nest egg ready. Did you say your wife? Where was your wife? In Australia.
My wife's going to Australia in November. So because her brother's over there, and he's got 3 kids. So she's going to basically be a babysitter essentially for 2 weeks.
Which town?
Just outside Brisbane.
What's it called?
My wife's called Felicity.
Felicity.
Felicity. I'm just trying to think. I can't remember the town that her brother lives in now. It will come to me, but so it's about about an hour from Brisbane, I think.
I probably know it because I've been many times to Australia. First of all, I went with my show Macready for the Commonwealth Games Arts Festival in 1972, I think. And I loved the country. I absolutely loved the country. And then I joined in 1990 the Trinity College as an examiner, a senior examiner, they call it, in speech and drama, because they'd asked me to go to Australia. It was a wonderful tour. I mean, all over. I've been to every town you can think of in Australia. And I even thought of settling there because I liked it so much. I had some wonderful experiences there. Of course, it's a stunning country and everything. But I remember some of the kids you meet were so lovely. There was a little boy somewhere, I think that was in Brizzy, they call it Brizzy now. And he was 8 years old. And I had to ask him to do an improvisation as part of the exam. So I said to him, now, Bruce, imagine that you're going to meet the Queen, and the Queen has come to your school. So you have to meet her. Imagine that. So he very serious. And this little 8-year-old boy swept to his knees and said, "Good day, Your Majesty. How are you going this fine morn?" And I thought it was beautiful to say this fine morn. Yeah, I love doing that job enormously.
Yeah,
I did as much as I could.
Anyway,
there you go.
You did an episode of Special Branch that had Stephanie Beecham, George Sewell, Jack Hedley. I don't know if that rings a bell.
Yes, I do remember that. That was rather glamorous. I was Stephanie's boyfriend or something. It was all very glamorous. And it was filmed in Millionaires Row in Hampstead. Dodo Watts cast it. Forgotten the name of the director. It was a lovely thing to do, and Stephanie's a lovely person. She was going through her glamour girl phase, and she came in very exotic outfits. And two borzoi dogs to accompany her. She was playing the star up to the hill, but she's a smashing actress. And I glamour girls usually. There's one I worked with a lot, Kate O'Mara.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and Kate was a great actress, but she sold glamour, which actually skewed her career a bit because they all assumed that she wasn't really serious, but she was.
I did actually meet her briefly at a convention, and she was, she was very nice to chat with.
Yeah, I bet she was. She would like you. I know she would. She's a genuine person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew her for many years. Many years, actually. And we did lots of things together. We did this show, Noel Coward and what was it called? Tea with, it doesn't matter.
Oh, Tea with Mussolini or...
No, it should be, shouldn't it? Joan Plowright's in that. She's a friend. Lovely, lovely woman. Nearly 94 now. Why have I forgotten this? Anyway, I'll think of it later. Yeah, Marlene Dietrich, that's right. Lunch with Marlene and Noel, it was called. And she was marvelous as Marlene Dietrich, absolutely marvelous. And the first scene was just a duologue between us. And the next bit, we all did our review things. I had to sing, she had to sing. And she sang, "Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing," that record. Marvelous. I was on stage with her when she was doing that because the pianist was there. And every night she got me. Marvelous. Yeah. There you go.
The director of your episode to grants was William Brain. BraYne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's gone from my mind. I don't know.
I wanted to mention that you did a Softly episode,
Yeah.
Softly Task Force. It had Walter Gotal in it. I don't know if you remember working with Walter Gotal at all, whether you encountered him on it.
Say it again.
Walter Gotal.
I can't remember.
I
All
mentioned it
gone.
because he died many years ago, but he did a few Bond films as basically he was the Gorbachev character essentially in the Roger Moore and first Timothy
Oh,
Dalton
right.
one. So he
Oh,
did
I
a lot
know
of
who you mean there. I
yeah,
know who you mean.
yeah.
I don't remember anybody else in Softly Softly. At least I don't think I do.
Yeah.
Who's that actor with a very booming voice?
So let's take cheats.
He was in I, Claudius as well.
Oh, Brian Blessed.
Yeah, Brian Blessed. I think he was in Softly Softly, wasn't he?
I think he was. I don't think he was in your
Yeah.
episode, but yes, I believe he did do Z Cars or those
Yeah,
kind
I
of
was in that as well, but
yeah.
only for bits. I can't remember being a regular in those sort of series. I did do quite a lot of television. I've done about 150 appearances, but the first ones were all pretty small until I got to Ireland. And then I got fantastic parts for RTE on their television. I played Coriolanus. I played King Lear, 4 hours in makeup. It's always 4 hours. And Ennui, I did another play, and a play where I had to be a gentleman farmer and an Irishman. It's lovely playing Irish because the accent itself seems to relax you, And you.
Yeah, it's nice.
Oh, very nice. Oh, God bless. Oh, don't you worry, Nolan. And I said to the director, why have you, he was a drunken gentleman farmer. And I said, why have you cast me when Ireland's full of real drunken actors? And the director said, because we think you learn it, which turned out to be absolutely accurate. And because although the Irish actors of that period, I'm sure they've got more discipline now, because acting came so easy to them, they never stop acting, Irish people. That's what they do. But they weren't very good at learning the lines. And there was one scene when I had to, with Brendan Caldwell, I think he was called, a very lovely, lovely actor, but not very good at learning lines. And he had just one scene with me. I was drying out in a hospital, and he was on this side of the bed talking to me. And we rehearsed once or twice, and he never learned his line. And I said, why aren't you learning it, Brendan? And he said, oh, I lose my spontaneity. So anyway, then we did the filming of it, and he did his bit. It was written on an idiot board, they call it, very unkindly. The lines were there, so he just read the lines. And so I asked the director at the end of that day's filming, I said, could I see that scene? And I did see the scene. And Brendan was marvelous. He didn't lose his spontaneity. I looked as though I was rehearsing. What a lesson, eh?
Yeah. Just to finish off on The Adventurer, as I sent you the episode, did you was it quite nice to see it? Did you think it was a good bit of television?
I thought it was nonsense, actually.
Nonsense.
I really did. But I remember I liked doing it because they were all such smashing people. And we were going round and round and round on this bloody monorail. I think I mentioned this. And so
yeah,
this short scene, we could only shoot 5 minutes you know, and you had to set up every time. So I think I saw it. I can't remember, but the script was ridiculous. But who cares? You know, it's work.
Yeah.
Our star was Jean Barrie,
Hmm.
spelled differently from me.
Yeah.
And he seemed to be a nice guy. I didn't have much to do with him. His wife came over, who was charming, and she dyed his hair, and we weren't supposed to say anything about it because he was going grey, and he wanted to look a bit younger. It's a mistake, I think, for men to die.
Grey, is there? You know, nothing wrong going grey, is there?
It's very distinguished, Phil. Hang on to that.
Because Jean is barely absent from the episode, but Barry Morse.
Oh, Barry! I loved him. He's a wonderful actor. He must have died by now, but he entertained us all the way going round, full of anecdotes. Now he'd be great to be interviewed. Yeah. Barry Morse,
he seems
wonderful
like
actor,
really good character. Yes, yeah. Well, talking of conventions, there's lots of conventions where people would like to meet people from the Adventurer. So if you ever fancy it, I'm sure make.
Shall I make
pocket?
10 quid a time? I'll take along my card machine.
Yeah.
Are there really conventions for the Adventurer? Are they really?
There's the London Film Convention that happens in central London. They do it 4 times a year, and they have a lot of TV guests. So that people love shows like the Persuaders, those kind of sort of IC shows, Granada Television. So I think people would be quite interested, in all seriousness. But I think there's a huge palette of people out there, sort of with interests and things. So I'm sure I'll send you the website details.
I remember thinking when television first came on, which was for me the coronation. But after that, you realized that if you put a teapot for 5 minutes on the telly, it would become a great star, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And I know my friend Mary Malcolm, she was a link woman, and she said, one time my earring fell off, and it was front page news.
Yeah.
Lovely woman.
Once you look at celebrity and the whole sort of, you got to laugh about it, haven't you, really? And you sort of think of how technically false it all is, because people are just people, aren't so it becomes this very almost godlike, almost replacing religion, isn't it, really? Sort of the celebrity culture.
Yes, it is. I know Paul McCartney, who came over when he came over to Denver, Colorado, I think I mentioned this last time. His girlfriend was Jane Asher. Jane was playing Juliet, and he came over. And a very nice guy, by the way, totally unpretentious, just nice. But he saw the first half of the play, and then he had to come backstage because he was being mobbed all the time.
Yeah.
Not much fun.
No, wouldn't have thought it would be. It'd be nice for a day, but after that, you kind of get
fame for a day. That would do.
I want to mention something just because I like the title of it: "The Ghost of Motley Hall."
Ghost of Motley Hall. Remember that very well.
Bad Lord William and the British Banana Company was
That's right. That's right. I was Bad Lord William. It was a fun part. It was a lovely cast and everything. Arthur somebody was in it who was a comic. What's his name? Arthur. Anyway, Nicholas Le Prevost was there, and it's Sheila Stiefel. It was a fun film. And the father of Joe.
Freddie Jones.
Freddie Jones. Freddie Jones, brilliant actor, father of Toby Jones.
Yep.
Who's now in every other thing you see. A terrific actor.
He is, isn't he? Yeah.
But Freddie, and we were directed by a very famous man called Quentin Lawrence, who was absolutely charming. The whole job was just lovely. Freddie Jones decided that he knew better than the director, and the director, so sensibly, he thought to himself, well, I'll let Freddie do it. He's good. Everything he does is good. So Freddie kind of took over the episode, and everybody was happy. Why not? We socialized together as well. We went to one of those Battle Varieties Club, where you sit on the front and eat fish and chips. You know, it was lovely. It's a good episode. That somebody sent it to me actually the other day.
Ah, right.
Yes, I do a lot of overacting, but that's required in the part. And
that's fun, isn't it? You know, sort of.
Yes, yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
Jones actually again at one of these film conventions, and yeah, Freddie was very nice to meet.
Yes, good.
You also had Peter Sallis in there. Arthur English. It was
Arthur English. Yeah, he was a comic. He played a spiv, short Irish, you know. And yeah, he was fun. Very nice.
Did you meet Peter Sallis at all on that one?
Oh yes, I did a few things with Peter Sallis. He was in a lot of stuff at the time. A very nice man, very witty, and a rather dry, acidic wit. You know, marvelous actor. I see him quite a lot in repeats of things, and he's always good.
He had a quite prolific career, didn't he?
Yes.
Another thing that you could charge autograph prices for, The Professionals. That's very popular. So
yes, it was. It was on the other day, and I had quite a good part, and the man who lives opposite me came over and said, "We saw you last night in The Professionals." That was a lovely job, and the two guys were lovely.
Yeah.
It was raining all the time, so we had to postpone filming because of all this rain, and we sang music hall songs.
Ah, right.
They loved the old-fashioned songs. They both knew them by heart, you know, and so did I.
Yeah.
It was a nice memory.
Yeah, that was of course Martin Shaw and Lewis Collins. As the stars. Were they sort of similar in many ways? Do they kind of different? How did you?
They got on very well. There was a lot of publicity about they were a bit estranged with each other. Well, not a sign of it. They were just friendly guys, and they were in a hit show. Lewis Collins was the big heartthrob at the time. Actually, they were mobbing him rather than Martin. And then he went to America and something went wrong. I don't know what it was. He did a test for 007. And
yeah, that rings a bell, yeah.
Yeah, and he would have been fine. But they turned him down because they said he was too aggressive at the interview. I would have thought that would have been quite helpful.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yes. No, he would have been fine. Martin Shaw's career is very long.
Oh, absolutely.
Started all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Very professional. But, you know, for years, Martin wouldn't let the Professionals to be repeated. It was in his contract.
Yeah.
He's obviously relented now. But it was a bit disliked by all the actors, of course, because they were losing their repeat fees.
Well, yes.
You get repeat fees for many years, you know. Quite extraordinary. I don't know if I got anything for Professionals. The one I get a lot for, not a lot of money, is one line I had in Calendar Girls.
Ah, right. Yeah.
They must have been shown hundreds of times.
Mm.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, I've seen Martin Shaw on stage a couple of times, and obviously I saw him opposite Robert Vaughan in Travangul Men. That was very good.
Yeah.
Doesn't like coming out the stage door, Martin, though. That he's not one of those.
Disappears, does he?
Well, I was waiting after him, and it was only about 6 or 7 of us. It wasn't a huge admiring rabble that you had to get through or anything. And we were just waiting very patiently, as you do sometimes. And we were waiting, and somebody just ran out the stage door and sort of just went like sprinted down the road. And the stage manager came out and said, "Oh, that was Martin." Apparently, he does that. Apparently, he just sort of doesn't.
He wants to get out. Yeah.
What he thought we were going to do to him, I don't know. But
well, it's gotten more difficult now. I mean, you used to just have to sign a book, but now they all want you to have a selfie with them, you know. And
it's a bit more of a.
It's a bit tiresome.
Yeah.
And in America, it used to be terrible. My God, they used to tear at your clothes. When I was a young man, this used to happen a lot in America. Maggie Smith won't talk to anybody either. She's all huddled up when she goes out, and if there's another exit, she goes to it.
Yeah.
But I think it's your duty to meet your fans. Really, you wouldn't be there if you didn't have fans.
But no, I think I've gone back to see people again on the strength of how nice they are, and so if they come up the stage door, you think, Simon Callow, lovely, and I thought, well, I've seen a lot of his stuff, and partly you associate the experience you're going to have with your impression of the actor, so.
Simon's wonderfully generous. I mean, wonderfully generous and interested in everybody.
So just finishing off on the professionals, did you encounter Gordon Jackson at all?
Yes, nice gentleman. He was kind of the straight man in that, wasn't he? With his own accent and everything. Yeah, he was very reliable. He became a huge star, playing the butler in Upstairs, Downstairs. Very unpretentious man.
And there's an actor called Barrie Marshall in that one as well as a character called Preston. I don't know if you remember that name at all. Gary Marshall.
Barrie Marshall.
Barrie Marshall. Barrie Marshall. Yes.
No, I don't know.
No, that's okay.
Brian Marshall, I know. Anyway, on.
Yeah. So that's two things you can sign for at these events. You did an adaptation of Two Gentlemen in Verona. That was with Tessa Peake Jones.
Yes.
That at all?
Yes. Oh, I love that job. That's repeated all the time as well. Yeah. Tessa Peake Jones, and I've forgotten the name of the other guy. It's a lovely place. Not done very often. I'd already done it actually at the Bristol Old Vic, so I loved the play. And Tessa was lovely. I think Tessa was in a series. Was she in a series of Sherlock Holmes?
I'm not entirely sure. I think probably most people remember her obviously for Only Fools and Horses being her most famous credit. But I think she's done quite a bit of work.
Yes.
You also had Tyler Butterworth in that, Michael Byrne as well. I
remember Tyler. I think we talked about this. His dad, Peter.
Yeah, we mentioned Peter, didn't we? Last time. Yes, we mentioned them before. I wanted just to so I just wanted to know sort of how, because you've been on the stage for so long, has there been many changes in terms of how theatre is done compared to when you first started? Anything noticeable in terms of the rehearsal periods, or is it kind of always been the same sort of thing, really?
No, big changes, really big changes.
Yeah.
I mean, I did 2 years of weekly rep where you do a play a week. And so there's no time for discussions. You just do it. And it's a wonderful discipline. And people all think that weekly rep must have been dreadful. And sometimes it wasn't. sometimes it was fine because the actors were all used to that pace of working, and they weren't messed about with by a director who wanted to make it all about Vietnam or something. You just did the script, you know, and sometimes you got wonderful results. If it was a West End comedy, which was very popular in rep, then you would use French's acting editions, which also contained the moves. And so, as a shortcut to getting the show on, you did the moves. And one time, I think it was at Salisbury, and there was a rather nice director who was more interested in cricket than the theatre. I said to him, I said, Oliver, this move, it doesn't make sense. Can we change it? And he said, look, cop, if it's good enough for the West End, it's good enough for us. So that was the direction.
Yeah.
But some of the actors were marvelous, and they'd been doing it for years. I only did it when I was a very young man, but they'd been doing it all their lives, you know, and the grind of it. Can you imagine learning these enormous parts week after week after week? Quite extraordinary. And you supplied your own clothes if it was a modern play. There was an actress I worked with who, Valerie Dunlop was her name. She was the award-winning actress from South Africa. And she was sort of all right, but she was really employed because she had two great skips, they called them, you know, the wickerwork basket things, full of outfits. She always looked marvelous. And Valerie, who I was very fond of actually, wasn't very good on the lines. And she would very often say to me during the play, what were you going to say? Then I'd have to think of something. So you had to be good at improvising, you know. But that's all gone, to answer your question, because the reps have closed down now. So a lot of the young actors coming out of drama schools find it very difficult to get a job at all. You know, if they can get 10 lines on Eastenders, it's celebration time. And they've missed all this backbone. And you think to yourself, well, what is it given me apart from being at ease in a play? Because if you've done it that often, and you know that sometimes you're not wonderful, but you were good enough to get away with it, you know. So you don't tend to get stage fright. It doesn't seem such an enormous thing that you have to overcome. You think, I'll do my best. It's a play. I'll do my best. That I liked. In other words, but the main thing that's changed over the years is the emphasis on the importance of the director. He or she has become very dominating, and in order to make their name, they would take a play like Hamlet or something and put their own stamp on it. And you find it's all about something that's nothing to do with the play. And to actors of my generation, that's a bit disrespectful to the author. I think the author's the most important person in the theatre.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
And your last screen credit was 2013, an episode of Doctors. Did you consciously step back from acting at that point, or was it just kind of sort of?
I've been doing all sorts of stuff. Did you say 2003?
2013 is your last screen credit. 2013. So 10 years ago now. Unless there's something missing on.
Yes. I can't remember. I really can't remember. But I only sort of retired after I'd come out of hospital. But even now, I still do things. I'm going to do a playing Shakespeare in December. I do another show called Playing Shakespeare for the Henry Irving Society. But I can't remember the last screen thing I did.
Yeah. Well, according to IMDb, it's was an episode of Doctors in 2013. That's the last one that they've got on there anyway.
Yes. Oh, I do remember that. That's terrible. I was playing a sort of lecturer's guy, and part of the play was I had to dance with this woman, and it was an old-time dancing group, and it was filmed in Manchester, I think, and I had to touch the woman up, and she said, "Oh, my husband's over there." So I said, "Oh, hello, what's his name?" "Alf." "Alf, now look, I'm going to have to touch your wife on the bottom, but don't get alarmed. It's only acting." And Alf said, "Have one on me." It's hysterical. I can't remember seeing that. Perhaps I didn't want to see it. I don't know. But that's the equivalent of weekly rep, actually. Doctors, because you just turn up and do it.
Yeah. I suppose same with EastEnders. It was quick turnover, that kind of sort of.
Do it. You just do it, yeah. And quite often, just in EastEnders, just before they're filming you, they say, "Oh, Frank, that line's different," "Oh, thank you very much." Fun to do.
Oh yeah. And just to finish, I was wondering if you'd be very kind to do an extract from As You Like It.
Well, now, let's think. What can it be? As You Like It is a play I really love, and I've done it 3 times, and I played Touchstone. No, wait a minute, I didn't play Touchstone. I played, what's he called? Jaques. People don't know how to pronounce that. It's pronounced Jaques. They think it's Jacques. And this is a very interesting part to play. It's not a great part, but it's a good part. And you can play this part in many different ways. And the way I played it was that he was an old man, which is a part I can still play now, looking back on his life, and he's bitter. He's very bitter. But you have to say to yourself as an actor, why is this man bitter? You're not told. It's a mystery. So as an actor, you've got to think to yourself, what is the reason? He's been unlucky in love, something dreadful has happened to him, and he's fed up with it. And towards the end of the speech, he realizes that it's too late for it to be rectified. That's it. That's his life nearly over. So it starts off, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like a furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow. And then the soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honour, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly, with good capon line, with eyes severe, and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The next stage leaps into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again towards childish treble pipes and whistles in his sound. last scene of all that ends this strange, eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. That's it.
Oh, good. Lovely. Yeah. You did that very well. Yeah. And it stays with you after all these. Well, it's one of those very memorable speeches, but you can
Well,
always.
Shakespeare does stay with you. It really
Yeah.
does. I can remember reams and reams of Shakespeare.
Hmm.
And it's interesting how often Shakespeare comes up in ordinary common speech. You know, he's influenced the way we speak. Wonderful.
Yeah, and so much of it is so relevant, just like that speech. It's sort of it's in our DNA, isn't it? How we think about life and death and everything in between, and just so vital.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is vital.
Yeah.
I've
Well,
got to speak. I've got something here which ought to be on your screen for a moment.
Oh yes, lovely. Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Judy says that she owes all her success to Shakespeare. He pays the rent, she said.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a great life, isn't it, to be an actor? And thank you very much, Frank, for sharing so much of your life with me in our chat.
Been a great pleasure, Phil. Thank you very much. Good luck with everything. And I hope Felicity has a nice time in Australia.
Oh, I'm sure she will. I'll pass it on. Thanks very much. Well, enjoy the rest of
All
your
the
evening,
best.
Frank, and all the best. Take care.
Thank you.